The lie of virtue, why the system is built against the good. Let me start with a question that may reach into your soul. Have you ever done the right thing and watched someone who lied, cheated, or manipulated walk away with the prize? If so, you've already lived the truth of George Orwell's prophecy. This video isn't going to be easy. It's not meant to comfort you. It's meant to wake you up. We've been told a beautiful story since childhood. A story that says if you're honest, kind, and hardworking, the world will reward you. That truth always wins. That justice somehow is built into the fabric of the universe. But what if that story is a carefully constructed myth? What if the truth is that the world doesn't reward goodness, it rewards power, manipulation, and control?
Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound insights.
Orwell didn't just write about dystopias. He wrote about the mechanics that create them. In 1984, the party didn't rise because it was just. It rose because it knew how to weaponize fear, language, and control. It understood a fundamental truth. Those who seek to dominate will always beat those who seek to be kind, unless the kind learn to see the game and refuse to play it by the villain's rules. Now, this isn't just about politics. This is about your life, my life, our lives. Why is it that in school, the kid who bullies others often becomes popular while the quiet, ethical one fades into the background? Why does the coworker who plays politics get promoted while the honest one gets left behind? Why do empires rise on blood, not compassion? Because the system we live in is not a meritocracy. It's a powercracy, and Orwell saw it coming. He saw how language would be used not to reveal truth, but to erase it. How the idea of goodness would be manipulated until it meant obedience. He understood that the very people who preach morality may, in fact, be the ones who benefit most from its breach. But here's where it gets deep. Most people still cling to the myth because it gives them comfort. If you believe good people win, then you can sleep at night. But if you face the truth that sometimes evil wins and goodness is crushed, you are forced to make a terrifying choice. Do I keep playing a rigged game? Or do I rewrite the rules of my own life? And here's what I need you to understand. Orwell wasn't trying to make us despair. He was trying to make us see clearly. He wanted us to understand that the only way to win as a good person is to stop expecting the system to reward you and start living by principles that don't depend on external validation. Think about that. What if you did the right thing not because it leads to reward, but because it is the only way to remain free in a world designed to enslave your soul? We live in a world that punishes authenticity and rewards conformity. But goodness, true goodness, is radically non-conforming. It refuses to become a cog in a machine that dehumanizes people. And that's what makes it dangerous to the system. That's why good people don't win, because winning, in the system's language, means becoming what the system wants you to be. And the good person says no. But that doesn't mean we are powerless. No, it means the opposite. It means we have the power to redefine what winning looks like. Instead of chasing wealth, power, or fame, we pursue meaning, integrity, and truth. And you know what? That terrifies the system more than any riot. Because a person who cannot be bought, broken, or bribed is the most dangerous force in the world. Orwell knew that. He wrote, "Freedom is the freedom to say that 2 plus 2 makes 4, even when the world screams that it's 5. That's what a good person does. They face the lie and they refuse to bow to it." So I ask you, what lies have you accepted just to survive? What truths have you silenced to avoid conflict? What parts of yourself have you hidden because the world told you that being good meant being weak? Let's talk about weakness. In Orwell's world, weakness was not the inability to dominate, it was the inability to resist. And that's a hard pill to swallow, because it means that many of us have been complicit in our own suppression. We've told ourselves that goodness means being quiet, being nice, not causing trouble. But that's not goodness. That's fear wearing a mask. Real goodness is courageous. It speaks truth even when it costs everything. It protects the vulnerable even when it's unpopular. It stands alone, if necessary, in a storm of lies. And that is why it so often loses, because the cost of being good in a corrupt world is high. But let me ask you something even deeper. If you had to choose between being powerful or being principled, which would you pick, knowing that one leads to comfort and the other to suffering? That's the crossroads we all face. Orwell's characters faced it. Winston Smith tried to rebel, but in the end, the machine broke him. Why? Because he tried to fight it with emotion, not strategy. He believed he could be good inside a system that was designed to annihilate goodness. He didn't understand you can't win a rigged game by following its rules. So what do? We stop expecting the world to reward us for doing the right thing. We stop assuming that morality equals success. We start building an inner life so rich, so resilient, that even when the outer world turns to ash, we remain intact. That's the real rebellion. That's how good people do win, not by conquering the world, but by refusing to let the world conquer them. And yes, it's lonely, it's painful, but it's also the only path that leads to real freedom. I want you to think about this the next time you see someone win by lying. Ask yourself, what did they have to sacrifice to get there? Their peace? Their soul? Their truth? And then ask, what am I willing to lose to stay true to myself? This isn't just philosophy. This is survival. Because when a system is built to reward the worst in us, being good becomes an act of revolution. So as we go deeper in this journey, I want you to hold on to this. Orwell wasn't just a writer. He was a prophet. And his warning wasn't just about Big Brother, it was about you. About how you live, how you resist, and how you protect the integrity of your mind in a world that wants to own it. The machinery of control, how the world is wired to break the honest. Let's dive deeper. If the first part woke you up to the painful truth that good people don't win in a corrupt system, this part is going to show you why. Why the very structure of the world seems engineered not accidentally, but deliberately to break the honest and elevate the cunning. Think about this. If you were designing a society based not on truth, but on control, what would you do? Would you reward integrity, or would you reward obedience? Would you uplift the thinkers or the followers? Would you let people speak their minds freely, or would you condition them to self-censor through fear, shame, and silence? Orwell answered this, and he didn't just theorize it, He built an entire world in 1984 to show us the blueprint. The party didn't just control people with violence, it controlled reality. Through newspeak, it made certain thoughts literally unthinkable. Through doublethink, it trained people to believe contradictions. Through constant surveillance, it didn't just watch bodies, it colonized minds. Now here's the gut punch. That world isn't fiction anymore. It's here, not through telescreens, but through algorithms, not through physical torture, but through psychological manipulation. Every click, every scroll, every swipe is part of a vast behavioral feedback loop. And what does it reward? Outrage, conformity, shallow validation. The loudest, not the wisest. The boldest, not the kindest. The manipulative, not the moral. So when we ask, why don't good people win? We have to look at what kind of people the system is built to elevate. And the answer is simple. It elevates those who serve its momentum, not those who question it, not those who slow it down with inconvenient truths. And yet we still wonder why honesty doesn't trend, why empathy doesn't go viral, why depth is drowned in distraction. Because the machinery of control is not designed to destroy all goodness, it's designed to co-opt it, to hollow it out and wear its skin. Think about corporate virtue signaling. Think about how even the language of justice is commodified, branded, and sold back to us. Diversity, equality, kindness, these words are used not to liberate, but to pacify. To give the illusion of moral progress while the same power structures remain untouched. So I ask you, when was the last time you saw someone punished not for doing something wrong, but for refusing to lie? When was the last time you watched someone lose everything because they told an uncomfortable truth? That's not a glitch. That's the system functioning exactly as intended. And here's the part most people miss. The system doesn't just oppress from above. It recruits you to do it to each other. Orwell's genius was showing us that the worst surveillance doesn't come from the government, it comes from your neighbors, your coworkers, your friends. The thought police are not in uniforms. They're in your group chats, your feeds, your comment sections. We've been trained to punish deviation, to mock the sincere, to laugh at the awkward, or to cancel the courageous, to praise the clever but punish the honest. The machinery doesn't need to kill the good, it just needs to shame them into silence. And it works. Because the deepest human fear isn't poverty, it's isolation. And the system knows that. That's why it breaks the honest not with guns, but with loneliness. It makes them feel obsolete, invisible, ridiculous. But here's the twist, that loneliness is not proof of failure. It's proof of clarity. Because to see clearly in a world built on illusion is to stand alone at first. And if you're feeling that loneliness, if you've been told you're too intense, too serious, too sensitive, you might actually be seeing what others can't or won't. And that is not weakness. That is a kind of inner power the system cannot touch. But let's not get romantic about it. Let's be real. Being good costs something. It costs you opportunities. It costs you popularity. It costs you comfort. And most people aren't willing to pay that price. So they compromise. Just a little. Just enough to stay safe. Just enough to fit in. And slowly, piece by piece, they trade their soul for social credit. Orwell understood this process. That's why the climax of 1984 isn't a dramatic revolution, it's a quiet, soul-crushing surrender. Winston doesn't die fighting. He dies inside, while smiling. That's the final victory of the system, not to destroy the body, but to make the mind love its cage. So I ask you again, what parts of yourself have you censored to survive? And is what you gained worth what you lost? Let's talk about resistance. Not in the way Hollywood shows it, not with guns and explosions, but with truth, with clarity, with refusing to participate in the lie, even when it costs you everything. That's the most radical act in a world built on deception. But let's also talk about strategy. Because being good does not mean being naive. Too many good people lose because they don't understand that power is not evil in itself, it's neutral. What matters is what you use it for. And if good people refuse to study power, to master it, to wield it wisely, they leave it in the hands of those who will abuse it. So here's the hard truth. If you want to survive as a good person in this world, you need to become dangerous. Not violent, not cruel, but capable. Capable of defending yourself, capable of thinking clearly, capable of standing alone, capable of walking away from anything that demands your silence. Because the system will test you. It will offer you comfort in exchange for integrity. It will offer you safety in exchange for obedience. And every time you say yes, you become a little more useful to the machine and a little less yourself. But every time you say no, even if your voice shakes, even if you lose something, you become more real. And that's what Orwell was really warning us about. Not that evil will win, but that the good will forget who they are. That we'll trade our identity for a seat at the table. That we'll forget how to speak truth because we've been taught to speak safe. So here's the challenge. Can you be honest when it's dangerous? Can you remain kind when the world is cruel? Can you stay awake when everyone else is asleep? Because the machinery of control doesn't fear violence. It fears consciousness. It fears the moment you realize you don't have to play by its rules. That you can be good without being weak. That you can be strategic without being corrupt. That you can say no and walk away. And when enough people do that, the machine doesn't just slow down. It starts to break. So the next time you're tempted to stay silent, to play small, to conform, remember this: the world is not neutral. It is not designed for your flourishing. If you want a meaningful life, you will have to build it yourself, brick by brick, choice by choice, truth by truth. And yes, it will cost you. But it will also give you something the system can never offer: integrity, wholeness, freedom. And that, my friend, is what it means to win, not by the world's rules, but by your own. The final rebellion: how to be good in a world that rewards evil. So here we are. We've walked through the lie of virtue. We've seen the machinery of control. And now we stand at the edge of the abyss, facing the final question. How do you live a good life when the world punishes goodness? This isn't a rhetorical question. It's the most urgent, burning question you will ever face. Because the decision you make here doesn't just determine your destiny, it determines your soul. Let's not pretend the stakes aren't high. To be good today is not to wear a badge or post a quote, it is to fight a war against the gravity of cynicism. It requires a kind of inner violence, a breaking of illusions, a rebirth through fire. You must sever your dependency on being liked. You must kill the part of you that needs applause. You must bury the fantasy that the world will ever thank you for being honest. Because it won't. And once you accept that, you become free. Not free in the political sense, not free in the economic sense, but existentially free. The kind of freedom Orwell hinted at but never fully described, the freedom to be real, even when the entire world is fake. And here's the paradox. The moment you stop trying to win by the world's rules is the moment you start to win in a deeper way. Not in the way of trophies, but in the way of truth. You start to build a life that cannot be taken from you because it's built on what can't be bought. You begin to speak in a voice that no algorithm can suppress because it comes from a place beyond the reach of manipulation. And you start to attract others, not many, but a few who are also awake, also real, also choosing the hard road. These people become your tribe. Not in the superficial, performative way of modern community, but in the ancient, sacred sense, a gathering of souls who have chosen the fire of truth over the comfort of lies. Together, you begin to form a counterforce. Not a movement, not a brand, but a way of being. A quiet revolution that says, I will not perform. I will not conform. I will not betray my conscience to be accepted by a culture that has lost its mind. And in that refusal, you become powerful. Not because you have control over others, but because no one has control over you. So what does it mean to be good in a world that rewards evil? It means you stop measuring success by outcomes and start measuring it by alignment. Alignment with your values. Alignment with your truth. Alignment with what you know in your bones to be right, even if it gets you mocked, fired, ignored, or exiled. It means you stop seeking safety in numbers and start finding strength in solitude. It means you choose meaning over comfort, depth over distraction, and principle over popularity. And most of all, it means you refuse to become what you hate, even if that makes you lose in the short term. Because what you keep is worth infinitely more than what you lose. You keep your clarity. You keep your soul. You keep your freedom. That is what Orwell was trying to tell us. Not that good people can't win, but that we must redefine what winning means. And that means letting go of the illusion that the world will ever reward you for being good. It won't. But your reward is something far greater, the knowledge that you lived without selling yourself. That you stayed awake in a world that begged you to sleep. That you told the truth when the truth was dangerous. That you stood alone when it mattered. That you loved even when it hurt. That you chose the narrow road, the honest road, the road that leads not to applause but to honor. So now I leave you with this. What kind of victory are you chasing? And is it worth the price you're paying? Because in the end, the only true victory is to look in the mirror and know you didn't bend, you didn't break, and you didn't betray yourself. Even when no one was watching, even when no one clapped. Especially then. That, my friend, is what Orwell wanted us to understand. That in a world built to break the good, the final rebellion is simply this: to remain good anyway.